Hello Bat fans, today we are painting the Adam West 1966 Batman. So without further ado, let's get painting. We are going to start off with a full coverage of Vallejo primer. So that's every piece of the model primed. And for once, I'm actually showing you us priming it. And the reason that I'm showing you this is because we're going to use some different primers. But I just wanted to show you that this first layer, this first coat, needs to be put down first. So once we've finished priming, we're going to move on to using this gloss black. We're going to only gloss black certain items. So for example, his base and the ornaments that are attached to the base. We're going to gloss black his boots, his shorts, gloves, his cape and his cowl. So that's his hood. And the reason that we're doing his costume is because the paint that we're going to use later requires an undercoat of glossy black, so that's going to help us later on. So here you can see me just gloss blacking the base, and I also did the bat symbol in the middle, so that's going to be nice and glossy. So I said it was all about the primers today, didn't I? So with regards to doing a zenithal, I did a part zenithal today, so I only did his thighs, his chest and his face to give it that shade and light and dark, but I didn't do the rest of his costume because of the paint that we're going to use. So here I'm using a white primer, again for a different use, but we're using it as a foundation to lay some yellow. So by putting a white base down, the yellow that we place after is going to be really bright, and that's what we need for Batman's logo. So it's a white base coat first, then the yellow on top, and you'll see how easy that goes down now. And then we moved on to this thing. I didn't know what it was, to be fair. However, I now know that it's a communicator and a batarang. So the communicator is like a little radio. So we needed to start that off with a base white so that we could then go over with this wolf grey in the middle. We're then going to go around the outside. I'm guessing that's maybe a speaker, perhaps, I don't know. But we're going around the outside of that wolf grey in this scarlet red. And then we're going to finish off going over the antennae and the little grill and the button with a bronze colour to finish it off. Yeah, it kind of looks cool, but it's huge. It's a huge communicator. Anyway. So, onto the base. So we're using this grey. This is the same grey that I used for his costume. So we're just putting down a solid grey base for that. So I used a putty to do the masking for this. This is my kind of masking. But, so I'm just removing the masking to reveal the mess that I've made underneath, and there are areas where I've missed with the spray gun and gone over onto the black, so I'll then just tidy that up with a brush. And then I was thinking of how to decorate the outside of this base. So doing something a little bit different. So rather than dry brushing, I thought I'd rub and buff. And I like rub and buffing. It's good. This tool that I'm using is a spouncer, which I can never remember what it's called. And we don't say a spouncer in our house, we say spouncer. So just using this spouncer and the rub and buff, and just edge highlighting really the raised decoration around the base. The good thing about this stuff is that you can, like, you'll see me catching the paintwork underneath, and you know, a little bit messy in places. You can go around and tidy it up, so you can go back in with the black gloss, for example, and use that to tidy it up. And I think in a couple of weeks we're going to do a rub and buff tutorial, so we can find out all about it, and the different colours and tools and stuff that we can use. But yeah, so I used the spouncer and then looked at the bigger ornaments, so the bats themselves, and I just got a bit carried away really. Yeah, I ended up doing the head that you can see now on the logo, and then the tips of his wings and his ears, and I think the moral of this story is learning to say enough is enough. And obviously I didn't learn, because I'm still going and still choosing areas to decorate in silver. So moral of this story is be a bit stricter with yourself, I think, and try harder. Whilst creating the audio for the video, I looked around the internet to try and find things that Adam West had said, you know, like his catchphrases and stuff. And he doesn't have any really, but he has lots of words of wisdom, and they're hilarious. They really do make me laugh. And one of them is, so he's in a bar and he goes in and he's meeting whoever he's meeting, and the waiter comes over and he says, "Oh, do you want to sit in the circle and I'll get you a table, Batman?" So he says, "No, I'll stand at the bar because I don't want to draw attention." And he's got this crazy costume on, which just made me really laugh. And I'd forgotten how kind of innocent and gentle TV was back in the day. And I've really enjoyed watching those clips again. So it's been really nice to just look back over them and reminisce, really. Not that I was there when they first came out, but I did see some repeats. So back to the job at hand. Just going to touch up where I've been overzealous with the rub and buff, and just tidy up those areas with the black gloss. And then back to some proper painting. So with a light grey, we're just going to give a very light base to his legs. So this is his costume, his under costume, his leotard. Don't know what you'd call it, but doing the legs and his body with a light grey. And then his body, there's only part of his body on show. And it looks like I'm being lazy, but I'm not. I'm just not painting the stuff that's going to be under his cloak. And the reason I'm doing that is because his cloak is going to have to be built around him later on. So it's a bit of a tricky model to put together, to be honest. So I don't want to be gluing on paint basically. So we left the covered areas unpainted. And then I'm now using a darker grey and I'm spraying up the model to give some shadow and shade. So the outside of his thighs, because they're going to be wrapped in his cloak, and then the inside of his thighs, there's a little bit of shade there, and then the muscles on his legs. So, and that's catching as you spray up his leg, that's catching those muscles. So again, using the dark grey on his body, just thinking about where the shadow and the shade will be. And then thinking about putting a white primer layer down, because this label on his chest is going to be the same yellow that we used for the Batman logo. So it's moon yellow. It's really bright, so we need solid white before we put this down. And then we finished it off with a black gloss for the logo itself. And then moving on to his shorts, I've put a black primer down first, and then the gloss, and then the white primer for under his belt, because his belt is going to be that moon yellow as well. So we're just going to mask off the white primer, and then we're going to use this colour shift paint, which is, oh, it's lovely. It really is lovely. It feels really luxurious. That's how it feels. And it's easy to go on as well. So, so we painted his shorts, and then we've painted, using the moon yellow, his belt, and then we've used 2 different types of gold on his buckle. So the gold that was just shown there, and then honestly I can't remember what the middle gold was, but it was just a different shade of gold. And that was his shorts. Really quite simple. Just turn the light off there so you can see, hopefully, the different colours of that shift. And then moving on to the skin. So again, using from the Fairy Flesh set, the rosy red as his base coat, and I'm spraying that up his face from his jaw up, and then just 2 squirts into his eyes, and then onto the base flesh, and that's just a very light coat, focusing on the centre of his face really. I think in the next couple of tutorials I'm going to look at using different flesh tones, because not everybody has the Fairy Flesh set, and that's not fair of me to keep on using that. So we're going to try other paints and see what you think. So moving on to the washes. So these are a blue, red, yellow wash, and I'm just liberally slopping these washes on and sponging them off. And tidying up any pooling. So you'll see me with the brush just go around his chin a lot, in between the join of his cowl and his face, because we don't want a build up of those different colours there. Here I am with the red. And then to finish on a red didn't feel right this time, just because the complexion of his skin. So I thought it was just a little bit too red, so went back in then with as a final coat. Even though I've done a yellow, I went back with another yellow. This is just me tidying up, making sure there's no pools of little pools of red or blue or whatever in those areas. using this yellow, just toned down the redness of the red, I think. And that's why I did it. And then that's how it dried. And then back into the booth using the natural shade, very thin coat for this, and you can still see all the different washes underneath there. And then over to the wet palette. So I've just ordered from the lightest to the darkest in shade here. And if you think of the wet palette as there's 6 colours here, so you've got from left to right, you've got the 2 lighter, then the middle 2 colours, and then the darker 2 colours on your right. If you think about the side of his face, what we're going to do is the 2 darker colours, we're going to be using those 2 colours round the side of his face. And as we move in closer to his nose, we're going to start working our way through the lighter, so the medium tones, so that pinky colour and the base flesh. We're going to be mixing and working our way through until then you're finally on the white for his highlights. So his nose, if you could see his nose, or his chin, those would be more white than they would be brown. So it's kind of working your way through, and it's also using really thin layers of paint. So this is quite a thin layer. I think with there's no hard and fast rule with skins. For example, I started losing the darkness under his chin at one point, so I decided to go back with the blue wash and just give it a very thin coat to bring that coolness back under his chin. And I think, people don't mention that they go back maybe and do that type of thing. Around his nose, I will use a red wash that helps bring the reds back into your skin. At this point of doing his skin, I wanted to know how close I was to finishing, really. So thought that I would start filling in his eyes and giving the piece context. And what I mean by that is to check. You're checking to see whether your skin tone matches the model that you're doing. Is it what's expected? Is it what you want? So adding the black around his mask, you can see actually, is the skin too light? Is it too dark? Or is it just right? And then filling in his eyes, it's giving more context. It's filling out the piece. And at this point, I was thinking, I think actually I've finished with the skin. I don't need to go back and do anything else to it. It's the right colour. It's the right shading. And then I went for it and did the gloss black with my amazing masking. Again, it did the job. So glossed his head and then obviously removed the masking and had a look to see where I thought we were up to. So I wanted to obviously put the blue shift colour down. I wanted to protect his face, so I've used this type of masking, latexy type masking before, and I didn't have a great time with it, to be fair, but my wonderful husband bought me this new stuff, which is really good. So I plastered it on. Gotta let it dry, obviously, which I don't think I did in parts, but it's okay. It all turned out okay. So this is me putting on the Extreme Black Hole, I think it's called, colour shift. Again, it's really lovely to work with. Really easy to go through the airbrush, so that's good. And then time to peel off the masking, and you can see it's still wet in his eyes because it was really thick, but how satisfying is that? Yeah. So it took me ages actually to pick all the blue stuff out of his eyes, so yeah, just be patient, let it dry, that's all you can do. So my hubby researched the colour of Adam West's eyes, and they are green. So we are going in with this hazily green colour, which did the job. It was perfect for this head, actually. On his research travels, he was finding lots of information about the costume that Batman wore, and in certain pictures we were trying to decide what colour to paint the model, and in certain pictures it's purple, and then in others it's a dark blue. So that's why we ended up with this colour shift, but apparently the costume would fade and change colour, and it would fade because of things like sweat, sunlight, studio heat, the lights, the heat from the studio lights, and they all contributed to it fading. Yeah, so fun fact, do with that information as you see fit, but it helped us to decide the colours that we were going to use. So we are pretty close to the end now, and we are turning our mind to the cape itself, and it was really difficult to do. We had to paint the model first, as I've said earlier, and then build the cape round him. So this is me painting the inside with a matte and the colour shift. A matte primer and the colour shift, and then putting it onto the model, and then mask the model, and then having to paint the outside of the mask. So there was sanding, there was obviously gluing, sanding, and then priming, which was not easy, but I loved this colour shift paint, just tidying up the insides here, and then you'll see me do the outside of the cape, and it just goes on really smoothly. So it was a bit of a pleasure to be able to use the colour shift. You go through a lot, so just be warned, if you're going to use this, you will go through a lot, so try and be sparing as you go and build it up slowly. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been watching our videos and helping us build our channel. It's really exciting, so thank you. And I hope that you can join us for our next video. And I finally have one thing to say. To the Batmobile!